Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Ichigo awoke his true powers to save his mother. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 76, White vs. Black. With Ichigo. Gah! Ichigo coughed out the blood that filled his throat and lungs while Ulquiorra watched in horror as a clawed hand speared through Ichigo's chest, followed soon by a black skull biting down on the crook of Ichigo's neck. It wasn't long afterward that it seemed like Ichigo's Ryatsu was weakening while the hollows grew stronger. Ichigo concentrated a bala in his right hand while the other grabbed the hand that went through him. He threw himself forward while blasting the hollow's head, forcing it to let go but also tear off a mouthful of flesh. Ulquiorra, desperate not to lose his king, swung a wing at the hollow's elbow and severed the limb. As it began flying away, he charged lances of Siros and blasted the hollow with them until the explosions became too distant to feel. He turned to find Ichigo on his knees. "Lord Ichigo!" he called out in worry, dropping to the hybrid's side. Ichigo panted heavily, grabbing the arm still stuck in his body before tearing it out with a roar of pain. Almost immediately, his mask manifested as jaws and he quickly ate the limb, restoring the most grievous injury. The hole in his chest closed, but his shoulder still burned. He tore away the cloak and Shihakusho to reveal decaying flesh. "What's happening?" For the first time in his life, Ulquiorra felt helpless and scared. That thing had a needle in its mouth. Ichigo groaned, remembering the sensation of something digging into him as that thing bit him, which left a burning pain like his flesh was dying. "Poisoned me with something." He tried to heal, but it only slowed the decay. He was about to cut it off before his instinct screams at him, just in time to get punched across the roof and into one of the towers. Just as he was about to move again, he was stopped by a strong grip on his throat. He finally had a good look at his opponent. It was almost identical to his hollow form but with a pitch-black skull and shorter horns. The hollow roared in his face, bringing out his tongue which split open to reveal a needle in between rows of jagged barbs. That's what Jin meant. Zangetsu gasped in realization. The hollow tried to bite Ichigo again, but he held the creature at bay after pulling his arms free. "Context Zangetsu!" he ordered as he struggled to free himself. "What are you talking about?" The hollow was soon pulled off and kicked away by Ulquiorra, giving Ichigo a chance to breath. "It's very distant in my memory, but I was a Proto-Arankar Ichigo," the spirit explained as quickly as it could. "Made from many soul reapers and hollows, I had the ability to hollowify other with a poison bite and transfer my being into others. And you became my Zanpakuto as a result." "Your point?" Ichigo unsheathed his blades and prepared for the next attack, Ulquiorra creating another spear. "My name was White Dot," Zangetsu said as Ichigo put the pieces together. "So he replicated you?" he asked as the now identified black reappeared with a charged Siro blasting down at them. The pair blocked the attack, but the pressure was pushing them back. "And this one seems dedicated to killing you. He drank some of your soul and is absorbing your erasure while the poison he injected you with is causing soul suicide. I'm slowing it down as best I can," Zangetsu explained as the oddest sensation went through him. "I could possibly die here. I don't know if I'm worried, pissed, or excited." The pair soon pushed aside the Siro as Black got between them. He kicked Ulquiorra in the chest and sent him flying before tackling Ichigo and slamming him to the ground. "I've been spending too much time around Zaraki," he realized before grabbing onto Black's horns and snapping the creature's neck and throwing him off. "I did not come here, fight my way through the majority of Aizen's forces, to die to some knockoff copy of my Zanpakuto," he roared as he tried to heal, again failing to stop the necrosis, as Black got back up and snapped its neck back. "I will succeed, get my sisters back, and kill Aizen," he roared as he launched a Getsuga Tensho, which Black literally inhaled, which gave Ichigo the opportunity to get in front of Black and punch it. "Sakatsu!" He shouted as both fists slammed into the being's gut, blasting a hole in it and then sending it flying. "Lord Ichigo!" Ulquiorra said as he reappeared at his master's side. "Can you dash? Help my friends, then bring them to me," Ichigo ordered, seeing Black getting back up. "Are you sure?" the Arrancar asked, not wanting to disobey but also concerned about his master. "Just go. I got this." Ulquiorra nodded before going to follow his master's orders. "I hope," Ichigo whispered to himself as he flashed before Black and got ready to fight. Fighting Yami. The two titans struggled against the might of the other. As Chad's avatar locked arms with Yami's giant form, he took the advantage of having 4 arms. The shield arms held onto Yami's while his attacking arms pummeled the Espada's body. Yami grunted with each blow, never once really fighting something that matched him in size, before opening his mouth and charging a Zero. Chad pushed the Espada away and threw up his shields to try and block the blast, which still pushed him back a few thousand feet and severely burned Chad's arms. "Gotta admit, you surprised me with that," Yami complimented with a savage grin. "Got any more tricks that might help ya? I'd be glad to crush them all." Chad was breathing heavily, exhausted from the fight and the energy he burned using Diablo Gigante. He took a step forward before he coughed up blood and felt his heart stop for a second. "Come on. Don't give out yet," he commanded his body, forcing himself to continue. "I need to win and help the others." He pushed forward, firing twin directo blasts and slamming into Yami's body before charging forward, tackling the Arrancar to the ground. "La muerte!" he roared out as he threw punch after punch on Yami's head, creating a deepening crater that sent shockwaves throughout Las Noches. As he did that, his nose began to bleed. "With Yuryu and Tatsuki. Well, if that's all, then I guess we're done here," Yuria said, confirming that the only forces left were already engaged in combat with their team, and from what he was sensing, it was only a matter of time before they won. That's when he felt Ichigo get badly injured and Chad's Ryatsu was fluctuating wildly. "Tatsuki!" he cried out to his ally. "I feel it. Ichigo and Sato are in trouble." Tatsuki calmly replied before turning to the twins. "Stay here and stay safe, you two. Next time, your big brother will personally bring you home," she said with a smile before scowling at the door. "Let's do this," she growled as she began to storm out the door. Neelil got up and turned to her fraction. "Pesh, Dondochaka, I'm going with them. Continue to watch over Yuzu and Karen," she ordered as she followed the pair. "You sure about this?" Yuria asked, still apprehensive about the Arrancar joining them despite all assurances. "Aizen lost my loyalty when he stopped protecting Yuzu and Karen," Neelil returned as they started running. "Plus, I'd like to meet this Ichigo everyone's talking about." They entered the main exit hallway to find Oraheim burying Loli and Minoli up to their necks in the ground. "I take it you know?" Yurio asked as she started running with them when they reached her. "They need our help," Oraheim simply stated as her spirits flew around her. "Sato is closer, so let's go to him first." "Right," the Quincy agreed, "and all of us together? That Yami doesn't stand a chance," he said as they exited the building, just in time to see Chad's avatar collapse on the ground next to them as Yami rose back to his feet. "Maybe I spoke too soon." With Ulquiorra, the former servant of Aizen, found his fellow Arrancar, resting in the crater he made in his fight with Ichigo. He still had some burns and scarring, but he still rested on the burning sands. Ulquiorra's presence did not go unnoticed as Grimmjow began to stir. The panther opened an eye to see the bat standing over him. "I'll be damned," Grimmjow said as he stretched out. "I thought you were loyal to Aizen no matter what." "I was lying to myself," Ulquiorra told him. "I stayed with what was familiar and safe, not accepting a reality when I really could see it." He looked over to where the giant forms of Chad's avatar and Yami were struggling. Ichigo's first order was to help his friends. Against Yami? In that state? Grimmjow asked as he got to his feet. "He's just gonna get stronger." "Are you scared?" the bat asked the panther, getting bared fangs in a savage smile. Excited. The two nodded at each other before flashing off to fight the Ciro Espada. With the Stern Ritters and Privaron. That's not good, Basby said as the battling sides turned their attention to the giant Arrancar as it beat down Chad. The Quincy and Privaron growled while Rudborn laughed. They need help, Candace said, extremely irritated now that she was covered in sand and sweat. Candy, you and Basby go, Bambietta said as spheres of Raysure appeared around her. We can handle this. The balls shot into the bodies of the foot soldiers Rudborn kept creating. I'll catch up when we're finished here. The bomb she planted exploded and took out half of Rudborn's army with Sarucci and Gantenbane killing the rest, but he had another 100 growing already. Go! She shouted as the heat and the thunder went off to fight Yami. Fighting Yami. You miserable ant! Yami yelled as his club tail slammed into Chad's Gigante Diablo, causing him to fall in a heap. You had size, but those punches were pathetic. He roared, getting bigger and bigger with his rage, while Chad's avatar dissipated. Why did I have to get the weak one? The next thing that happened was a geyser of flames erupting at the base of his spine. Funka! Tatsuki yelled, revealing herself in the inferno that was burning the Arrancar. As he began to react, a series of flashes appeared and rained arrows down on Yami. Oraheim soon appeared by Chad and they sank into the sand, using Terra to transport him away from the battlefield. We're bringing you down, you colossal dumbass! Tatsuki yelled as she flashed away from his coming grip. As Yami began to turn, the sand around him began to melt and he sank into a pit of molten glass. Size isn't everything, Basby called out at the edge of the pool, but it makes you a much easier target. Next to him, Candace began throwing bolts of lightning while circling around the behemoth Arrancar. Yami was screaming as millions of volts of electricity coursed through his being with every strike, cursing when Neliel threw her lance and it drilled right through his backside. He roared out in frustration as a Ciro charged in his mouth, firing a sweeping blast in front of him. When he finished, he saw two former allies directly in front of him. Gran Rey Descaron / Gran Rey Lanza. Grimjaw and Ulquiorra shouted as the former left 10 massive crisscrossing gashes in Yami's chest while the latter's spear tore out his eye and part of his face. You turned traitor! Yami roared out after screaming in pain from the attacks. All of you! I'll kill all of you! He was enveloped in red light as his form changed and grew even bigger. The light faded to reveal a gargantuan ape form that was even bulkier than the previous one, had a long tail in place of his multiple legs, multiple curved horns on his head, none of the protrusions, and all of his wounds were healed. That ain't fair, Basby stated, looking up at the giant. Life rarely is. Ulquiorra responded as the whole group jumped out of the way of his smashing fist. Ichigo versus Black. Far away from Las Noches, Ichigo and Black continued to fight. The necrotic poison that ate away at Ichigo's body left his left arm rotted and dead, forcing him to use Reizo Tengai to continue fighting, and it kept spreading. Part of his face and most of his left torso was slowly dying, the injuries that Black managed to inflict having slowed down his regeneration while the rapid and constant movements of fighting helped to spread the toxins. His strength was growing weaker and even his vast amount of Ryuryoku was draining away since Black was able to absorb Ichigo's Raysure, even when not using any Raysure attack. How the hell am I going to kill this thing? Ichigo mentally roared as Black blocked a sword strike, only to receive a hard kick to the stomach. The monster creation rose back up and tried to bite onto Ichigo again, only to get a mouthful of Zangetsu's hollow blade as Ichigo tried to cut off its head. He cursed his reflex as Black still managed to suck away some of his Raysure just from that, but it did give him the window to attack and nearly cut Black in two with his Quincy blade. Not that it did him much good since Black had similar, if not stronger, regenerative abilities. Nothing I'm doing is affecting it. He threw Black away and tried to think of a new strategy. Then he felt his heart stop and coughed up some blood. Ichigo, the rot is spread to your heart and lungs, Zangetsu informed his wielder. Ichigo's heart started again, but the beating was irregular and his vision was slowly fading. You have to stop this now. If you have any ideas, I'd love to hear them. Ichigo returned, struggling to stand while Black circled around him like a patient predator waiting for its prey to die. I can't afford to take the few seconds I need to regenerate my body with Black ready to pounce.
Then give it what it wants. You know the keto. Zangetsu vaguely advised. What keto? It eats keto, and how is that going to?
Ichigo mentally roared before realization struck. He dropped his guard and in an instant, Black bit into his flesh again.
Bakudo number 61, Rikujikoro. Bakudo number 79, Q Shirbari.
Ichigo cast, locking Black in place with rods of lights and black holes, as its mouth began to burn and red glowing cracks appeared across the rotting parts of Ichigo's body.
Heido number 96, Edo Queso.
A massive shockwave rocked across Hueco Mundo before a giant crimson katana blade appeared and exploded, burning away everything.
Fighting Yami. Stay still. Yami roared as he smashed a fist into the sand, Bazby and Tatsuki barely dodging with their speed techniques.
After ensuring Chad's stability and running into Rukia and her companion, Oraheim returned to offer any assistance she could. Everything they used either barely fazed him or just bounced off. The only two really effective weapons were Oraheim's Mass Immune and Uria's Seelschneiders, but neither were cutting deep enough to really be effective. The worst news was that Yami was still growing, getting more and more frustrated at his enemies.
What does it take to kill this guy? Candace roared in frustration, blasting him with as many volts of electricity as she could muster. Yami's reaction was to swat her like a fly before Neeli'll carry her away.
The fighting paused when a shockwave rocked through Las Noches, breaking the walls and ceiling as the building slowly came apart. Everyone paused to wonder what just happened, everyone except for Yuria, who was keeping tabs on his cousin the whole time.
Cover!
He shouted as he moved as fast as could to bring everyone together, putting Yami between them and the coming blast.
Oraheim erected a barrier, with each Quincy lending a hand, seconds before powerful air and fire destroyed the wall and fried Yami. The barrier nearly broke before the explosion ended, leaving a charred black Yami and devastated landscape. The group stood in awe of the destruction as the rest of their side appeared. What the hell was that? Bambietta asked, Sirachi and Gantenbane flanking her with the Afro Arrancar carrying Rudborn. Dondochaka and Pechi showed up shortly after that, with a giant eel-like Arrancar that carried Chad and the twins in his mouth, finally followed by Rukia and Roka. My power involves explosions and I've never made one that big.
Yuryu ignored them as he began running toward Ichigo, powering through the burning heat of the still burning landscape. Lost in concern for his cousin, Yami's massive hand suddenly caught him in a crushing grip.
That hurt.
He groaned as he rose back up. It still burns.
So hot.
He slowly tightened his grip.
I wonder if your blood will help me cool down some.
That's when his fist began glowing. Soon after that, blades of light shot through his hand and left him fingerless.
Yuryu was in his Volstandig again and glaring at Yami. I'm not dealing with you anymore. The Quincy yelled out, brandishing his wings again and flapped.
The action shot out thousands of seal Schneider feathers that pierced through Yami's mask and skull, leaving the Arrancar still as a statue before collapsing to the ground.
Enjoy the lobotomy. Yuryu yelled before flying off to find Ichigo. With Ichigo.
Ichigo laid there, in the center of a scorched crater, missing most of his upper left body.
The poison reached pretty far, taking a part of the heart, one lung, and some of his ribs, all of which was healing very slowly as a result of Black's feasting on Ichigo's Ryuryoku. The only part that was really left untouched was the tattoo of his hollow mask that Urahara put on him. Black, meanwhile, matched his name as he was charred to a crisp. The bad news was that he was also healing and slowly started to get back up. There's only room for one alpha predator here. A voice said as Black's regenerating eyes saw Zangetsu in hollow form. Black opened his mouth and shot his needle tongue like a dart, which Zangetsu easily caught and stabbed back into one of Black's eyes, eliciting a mind-numbing screech. The screech was cut off as Zangetsu grabbed Black by the throat and lifted him into the air, face to face with the Zanpakuto spirit. And I don't like competition, he said before quickly devouring the beast. It was healing quickly, but Zangetsu was faster and made sure to get the most from his prey. As he swallowed the last of his opposite, Ichigo's regeneration skyrocketed and had regained his energy. Zangetsu returned to Ichigo's inner world just before Yuria found his cousin. "Ichigo!" he called out, dropping to the hybrid and trying to wake him up with every shake. "Ichigo! Ichigo, are you alright? Ichigo!" That was painful. Ichigo groaned out as he slowly opened his eyes. Zangetsu already informed him of what was going on just before awakening. "What's the news, Yurio?" he asked, trying to focus on the mission at hand. "Yuzu and Karen are safe and we may have defeated the last of our opposition here in Hueco Mundo," he reported, helping his cousin back to his feet. "I'm not sure about the last guy. I shot my feathers into his head, so he's either a vegetable or dead. I rushed to find you over making sure he died." "Feathers?" Ichigo asked, finally noticing Yuria's wings. "Is that the Volstandig?" he asked, pointing at the white, vibrating, buzzsaw feathers in Yuria's bright wings. "According to Basby, yes." "Yes it is," Yurio replied. "Huh, neat." Ichigo returned, rising to his feet. "Okay, let's finish things," he said as he grabbed onto Yurio and flashed back to the group. He saw the stern ridders waiting around, unsure of the next action to take, while Tatsuki and Rukia were with Yuzu and Karen. A female Arrancar was tending to an unconscious Chad, while Oraheim and his ally Arrancar were by Yami's unmoving body. "Ichigo/Ichi and I." The twins cried out as they ran toward their brother. "We knew you'd save us." Yuzu cried tears of relief that this horrid episode of their life was coming to a close. "Can we go home now?" "I don't think so," Ichigo answered regretfully, sad to see his sisters like this. "Aizen and the Gotii are likely fighting right now." "Then go kick his ass," Karen told him, smiling confidently at her brother. "We can wait." Yuzu wiped her eyes to smile at Ichigo before nodding in agreement. "Not without us," he heard Grimmjow say, making Ichigo turn to see their bloodied mouths and hear Ulquiorra swallow. "I just had a big meal, and I'm ready to work it off," he said with a savage grin. "I will not abandon my rightful king again. Where you go, I follow," Ulquiorra told him, before both showed their strengthened Ryatsu. Ichigo looked over to Yami and saw some bits that were cut off. "Fine," Ichigo responded as he flicked his wrist and opened a massive garganta. "But bring Yami. I want to make a point." The two Arrancar grabbed their brain-dead former ally and dragged him with them as they ventured back to the world of the living. "The rest of you, stay here. I'm finishing this." Fake Karakura Town, end of the last chapter. Ichigo, Ulquiorra, and Grimmjow held Yami in front of them as they exited the portal between worlds. At once, the three men dropped Yami and let him crash to the ground. Ichigo surveyed the battlefield until he locked eyes with Aizen, who seemed to be very irritated with the hybrid. "I broke into your house, took your army, destroyed your castle, and beat your every attempt to kill me," Ichigo stated as fact to the real Aizen among the three before flashing in front of him. "Now I'm going to kill you, Aizen," he almost growled as his eyes turned black and gold. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Rukia finally reappears. "Finally! I can help with the fight again," she mentally cheered, having felt useless and forgotten for the last couple of chapters. Just then, Yuria shot his attack into Yami's head and made him fall. "I was forgotten till the last minute again, wasn't I?" Chapter 77, Hero of Our Time. With Harabel. "Ulquiorra, you defected?" The female Espada gasped in surprise, seeing the most loyal of Aizen's army turn traitor. Not only was that shocking to her, she sensed that her fellow Arrancar grew immensely more powerful since she last saw them. She had no trouble believing in Toshiro's claim that Aizen was afraid. Especially when the hybrid immediately went for the man and viciously attacked him. "That's what Ichigo does," Toshiro responded as he got beside her, ready to freeze her at a moment's notice. "He gains the respect of almost everyone that fights him because he does not quit and often prefers a fair fight. Not that there's a lot of people that can match him as he is now."
especially since he seems to have gained more power. The ice dragon thought as he looked to his ally, getting attacked by many copies of Aizen. Soon the trace bestias and their opponents appeared by the two, looking beat up and exhausted.
That's insane,
Apache said, barely keeping tracking of the fight.
Should Ichigo win, we lay down our arms,
Harabel ordered, content with watching how the fight to settle this war would end.
With Stark? That kid.
The Primera Espada thought in shock as Ichigo attacked Aizen.
Is he really that strong, just to be able to protect? Can he show me how to control mine?
He turned his focus to the Arrancar that came with him, Grimmjow attacking Tosen and Ulquiorra attacking Jin.
And they've gotten stronger as well. Is it really possible? Lilinet soon appeared at his side, sensing his internal conflict.
I did not lie, Espada, Ishin said, gripping his sword and ready to aid his son despite the years of training leading to this one point in time. A father should be able to protect his children after all.
My son is incredibly powerful.
So strong that the captain commander, who refused to relinquish his position to anyone weaker than him, has stated that Ichigo is his successor to the position. The pair returned their gaze to the hybrid as he and the other two captains fought with the growing number of Aizens.
I really was unlucky to be born a hollow. Wasn't I? With Grimmjow and Ulquiorra. Well, looks like His Majesty started without us,
Grimmjow said with a savage grin, watching Ichigo charge at his previous master.
You worried? He asked Ulquiorra, who regained his stoic expression. Or at least a little conflicted? I was conflicted when I was fighting Ichigo.
The bat returned, finishing his analysis of the two combatants.
Now, I am content.
I protected him when he was weak and I follow him now that he is strong. The shifting of Ryatsu drew their attention to Tosen and Jin, who were resuming their fights.
Dibs on that blind bastard, Grimmjow called out before dashing to the masked Tosen. You do that, Ulquiorra said, knowing Grimmjow couldn't hear him anymore. I'll focus my energy elsewhere.
He looked to Jin, who was holding his own against two of the more veteran captains while glancing at Aizen.
Those three aren't really fighting,
he observed before moving to join the fray.
Tosen fight. Damn it all.
The blind wizard thought as he parried an attack from Kensei, barely avoiding Kamamura's bolus as he tried to tie up the vengeance-fueled man.
Everything is crumbling around us, but I cannot fall. Justice cannot fail.
He took advantage of his other, more enhanced, senses to land a devastating cut on Kamamura's arm, severing the tendons that let him use his bolus. He was about to block an attack from Kensei when he heard Grimmjow call out.
Dibs on that blind bastard.
Then the Arrancar in question appeared next to him and punched his head, sending him down through a building.
That felt good, Grimmjow said, cracking his knuckles with the two Soul Reaper captains standing beside him. What did Ichigo do? Kensei demanded, wanting to be sure the hybrid won the Arrancar's loyalty.
The conversation prematurely died as Tosen stabbed Grimmjow through the back, kicked Kamamura away, and blasted Kensei with a Siro. After coughing up blood from the attack, Grimmjow grabbed the blade and pulled it further into his body. Tosen, being pulled along, got struck with a headbutt and elbow from the Arrancar before being kicked off by Grimmjow, whose massive wound was healing.
So glad I got that healing factor back, he thought as he saw Tosen's mask. Well. Looks like you wanted to play hollow. Too bad you won't top the original, he taunted, feeling Tosen actually glare at him. I'm not surprised you betrayed us, Grimmjow, Tosen returned, readying his resurrection. You were always just a beast. No care of peace or justice. Nope, Grimmjow gleefully agreed. Didn't care then, don't give a shit now. Well, about your justice anyway. I follow my own.
Tosen paused, curious about what justice a mindless beast would follow.
Isn't justice following a law and the punishment by the law is dictated by the people? I'm a hollow. I follow the law of Hueco Mundo. The strongest commands all.
And nothing Aizen did has stopped Ichigo, or his friends.
I follow justice more than you ever did. You caused more bloodshed than you had ever prevented and dare to lecture me. I'm the Arankar of destruction.
He activated his Segunda Etapa and let loose an ear-splitting roar that shattered all the buildings around him.
And now, I'm going to destroy you, he said before glowing blue with an aura taking the shape of a panther skull.
You will suffer for that.
Suzamushi Hayakushi, Griller Grillo, he said before exploding into darkness. Aizen fight.
Ichigo slashed a point-blank Getsuga Tensho to Aizen's face, blasting him quite a ways away from the hybrid, whose instincts screamed at him about coming attacks. He moved his hollow blade in front of a slash from a copy Aizen while the other shot him away with a Raikoho. Ichigo regained his footing, just as the two fake Aizens attacked him. He was barely keeping up with either and was soon being engulfed in a Kuroshitsuji.
Bakudo number 79, Q Shirbari.
Kasuke called out, trapping the spell-casting Aizen with multiple black holes, while Genryosei cut the fake Aizens in half before pulling Ichigo away from the spell.
Stay vigilant, Ichigo,
the old dragon advised, standing back to back with his young disciple.
This is a most troubling Bankai. Or is it the most perfect of his illusion skills?
He said, as 5 copies of Aizen surrounded them.
My Bankai does not allow for hypnosis. One Aizen spoke as each one began explaining.
What it does is show my reflection.
Every Aizen before you is a complete copy of the original.
All the same speed, strength, skill, and power. The only difference is that the real one can be damaged while striking one of my reflections just makes more of me.
To demonstrate, each Aizen beheaded one another, now numbering 10.
Urahara stabbed through the Aizen he had trapped in front of him, only for another to be created.
Wrong.
The pair yelled as they all convened on the 3 Soul Reapers. Ichigo, on the other hand, felt something in his chest pulling to one direction. Trusting his instinct, he dashed in that direction before sensing something on the building.
Sakatsu!
Ichigo shouted, landing a devastating double punch that shattered the Kido Aizen was hiding behind and breaking a few ribs while sending him through a couple buildings.
That lucked out.
He panted, barely getting his blades up quick enough to block Aizen's next attack, which destroyed dozens of buildings around him, and he was barely holding him off.
Was that your hollow instinct that revealed me?
Aizen asked, curious and furious that his plans were practically falling apart.
You shouldn't have figured out where I was.
If I had to guess, I'd have to say it was because of my compass. Ichigo grunted out, forcing some distance between him and Aizen. Once he had that, he opened his Shihakusho to reveal his hollow mask tattoo. If Urahara explained how he negated Kyokusu Uegetsu's power, then you know each of us have a small amount of that blade on us. I have the most, which he used to make this tattoo on my chest. Even now, I can feel the small bits of Kyokusu Uegetsu reaching out to each other,
trying to restore itself.
You can't hide from me, Aizen. The traitor glared at Ichigo before a dozen copies of himself appeared at his side.
You must be foolish to think you can still kill me,
Aizen said as Ichigo brought his 2 Zangetsu together.
Not without my Bankai.
The hybrid replied as his black energy consumed him.
Bankai!
He shouted as the fog of darkness imploded and melted away, revealing Ichigo in his Vasto Lord hollow form, jet black wings of Reisher on his back, and his Zangetsu as one black and white kyber blade with a chain connected from the bottom of the hilt to just under the tip of the blade.
Tensa Zangetsu,
Ichigo said, in his warped voice. That's your dash. Aizen started, being very unimpressed with Ichigo's changes as he could no longer sense Ichigo's Ryatsu, until Ichigo dug his finger into Aizen's chest. Kai? He felt a sharp nail brushing against his heart with every beat, threatening to cut the vital muscle open. There's more, but all you need to know is there is no way you can defeat me now, Ichigo said, just before a blade erupted from his chest and into Aizen's heart.
With Jin.
Jin was about to stab Yukitake when Ulquiorra came down, grabbing the silver fox by his head and throwing him down to the ground.
Kayaraku intercepted Jin and called out a color before attacking, something Jin did as well.
Ulquiorra's focus returned to Yukitake, who had a small coughing fit, before meeting the Arrancar's gaze.
This is just a mock fight between you 3.
The bat said while Yukitake kept his surprise in check. Jin was a traitor, just the same as Tosen.
Why are you not making any real effort to kill him? You are Ulquiorra, correct? The captain asked, earning a nod from the Arrancar. Ishin told us about you and Ichigo.
As for Jin, we're waiting for the chance to strike at Aizen. Jin left a letter explaining his true intentions, and during this fight, he explained how he plans to do so.
He said as Ichigo and Aizen began to move. Come on.
Yukitake ordered while shooting down to Jin and attacking, forcing him and Kairaku to move along and keep Aizen near Kairaku's power range. Soon, the world became suffocating as it felt like all the erasure was gravitating to one place. The four looked to Ichigo as he now held a single blade and looked like a genuine god of death.
Kajioni,
Kairaku said as his Shurikai changed the game.
Ulquiorra dashed to Jin's side and kicked him down to the ground, a brighter light appearing above them.
Looking up, he saw a large ball of red light behind Ichigo and the many Aizens, casting a shadow that covered Jin. Kairaku appeared next to Jin, sparing a quick glance to Yukitake to ensure his sickly friend was fine, and the two sank into the shadows.
Bankai,
Jin said as his blade shot out from Ichigo's chest and into Aizen, the fox soon appearing from the darkness Aizen's shadow made on the hybrid.
Kamishini no Yari.
Before either Ichigo or Aizen could react, Jin grabbed Aizen by the throat to finish his one shot at killing the man he swore vengeance against.
Koros, Kamishini no Yari.
And Aizen's body began to disintegrate from the spot Jin impaled him on.
With the goatee eye? Huh, that was anticlimactic.
Kenpachi said as the rest of the Gotii assembled to watch the final battle.
Not too surprising.
Shinji said, seeing Jin emerge fully from the darkness. Jin was always a terrifying bastard. Didn't think his grudge was stronger than mine.
Hopefully we can all breathe a sigh of relief and prepare for the Quincy War.
Soifan said, hoping that the whole Hogyoko mess can finally be put to rest.
Do you really think it's over? Urahara asked as a very familiar light came from Aizen's chest. No. This final battle is just beginning. Yamamoto announced as everyone braced themselves. Ichigo versus Aizen.
Well, there goes that plan. Ichigo voiced Jin's thoughts as Aizen was healed in front of their eyes, now encased in a white chrysalis form. Ichigo quickly grabbed Jin and threw him out of the way of Aizen's descending blade, catching the spirit steel in his hand.
My turn. Getsuga Tenso,
he said as he slashed Aizen across his chest and sent him flying with a concentrated blast of erasure, sending Aizen far beyond the boundaries of civilization. He took a single flash step, passing by all of Aizen's clones, and reappeared in front of the man. Aizen rose to his feet, his white shell falling apart with his Ryatsu growing every second.
You're too late, Kurosaki,
he shouted, coughing up black blood as his face was freed. I absorbed the Hogyoku into my being before this battle.
It will not allow me to die by your hands. He stood tall, now in a pure white robe made from his former shell with pitch black eyes and long flowing hair. Then I'll have to keep killing you until it gives up.
Ichigo growled, swinging his blade as dozens of Aizen clones appeared and attacked. Ichigo blocked the onslaught, but the rain of strikes eventually cracked and shattered Zangetsu. A single blade as a Bankai, and so easily broken too. Aizen mocked as he raised his hand, pointing at Ichigo.
In what reality did you think you'd win? Seeping crest of turbidity. Arrogant vessel of lunacy. Boil forth and deny. Grow numb and flicker.
He chanted with his many copies as black enveloped the hybrid. The spell was interrupted when the shards of Ichigo's blade speared through Aizen.
Mayanaka no ha,
Ichigo said, flaring his black wings as his feathers and the blade shards gathered around him, spinning as each one formed into a perfect copy of Ichigo's blade.
Hollow, Quincy, Soul Reaper. Years of training under the best and brightest of the Quincy and Shinigami. In what reality did you think I'd fail? He threw his hat out as dozens of the blades went to each one of Aizen's clones while the rest circled behind him like a serrated halo. He grabbed one of his blades and dashed at Aizen, who raised his blade to block. The second the blades collided, they sent out a thunderous clang as Aizen struggled against the hybrid. Is he really this strong? He thought in shock as another Ichigo appeared at his side, the one in front of him fading. Gemelos Sonido.
He blocked as another appeared behind him, leaving a deep laceration in Aizen's back that soon healed, but he could not keep up as Ichigo continued to attack in different places nearly instantly. It suddenly stopped and Aizen took the only opportunity he had to catch his breath. When he looked up again, he saw Ichigo with two Zangetsu in the rough form of a bow and an arrow notched in the chain. Heiliger File Null, he said as he shot the black arrow through Aizen's chest, destroying his torso. Ichigo watched impassively as Aizen regenerated and transformed into a butterfly thing. Still not done yet? For someone that wanted to take the throne of the Soul King, you're coming up pathetically short. He taunted as Aizen began to laugh. This is almost perfect, he said before laughing again. Truly. This is amazing. The artificial transcendence brought forth by the Hogyoku versus someone who was born of all the great powers to transcend them all. I truly wonder which will succeed. He pointed his blade at Ichigo while his dozens of clones willingly cut and slashed themselves, creating more until they numbered in the hundreds. Now surrounding the hybrid, all of them held out their hands and charged a dark purple Siro in each of their hundreds of hands. Die! All the Aizens cried out as Ichigo circled his hands around himself. Sclaverai! He whispered as the concentrated energy blasts broke apart as they got closer to him and restored his black wings. Before Aizen could react, Ichigo disappeared, and each one of his copies were caught in a Horenkido spell that soon bound all of them together in a single spot. Ichigo reappeared beneath that grouping, with his hand raised up and hundreds of Zangetsu blades circling him. As the blades spun over his hand, Aizen could see blood getting onto each blade. Gran Rei Gitsuga Jujisho, the hybrid said as each blade cut past each other and shot the piercing blast through him and his personal army, disintegrating the whole lot. Ichigo let his arm drop as he waited, somehow knowing that the Hogyoku would restore Aizen. The man spent too long attempting to achieve this. Or was it that Ichigo himself wasn't satisfied? Soon the sky was obscured with what seemed to be an endless horde of Aizen, having once again mutated to a black skull figure with eyes on his wings with skulls on the tips and 3 holes in his chest. You can keep killing me, I'll keep coming back. Aizen taunted as each got ready to attack. Stronger than before. I will win eventually, Ichigo. The hybrid threw out his arm as a chain of one of his blades attached to his shoulder and wrapped around his arm, turning into a thin blade of pure black rapier. Nujutsu, he said with a simple swing, once again wiping out Aizen and his millions of clones, in an all-consuming blackness. The blade reappeared in Ichigo's hand and blew away into dust, a small empty feeling in Ichigo's soul remaining. There goes one of the Aswachi Zangetsu absorbed. But that was ridiculous, he thought, reflecting on the power of the attack, as once more, Aizen came back yet again. He seemed to regress into a more human appearance, without his clones coming back. Looks like that attack took something from you. Aizen gasped as he struggled to stand, feeling the strain of dying multiple times. No more special tricks, Ichigo. He leveled his Kyoka Suigetsu to his opponent. Let's just fight. See which is truly the greater one. A Zangetsu flew to Ichigo's hand and soon compressed itself to a regular katana form. I think I understand you, Aizen, he said as the two settled into a dueling stance. All this power, this strength, why should people like us bow to others when we are so much stronger? The two rushed at each other and shot into the sky before their blades clashed and cleared the sky of clouds. All this power and yet were expected to bow to the Soul King? They pushed one another back and continued the assault. Aizen went for a stab through Ichigo's chest, who swerved around it with a slash counterattack that Aizen deflected with a quick twist of his blade. Truly absurd. Aizen yelled in agreement as the separated and swung again, dancing the deadly dance of the sword. An abomination that sits on a meaningless throne. Ichigo blocked an overhead attack, where he slid his own blade down Aizen's and cut into the man's chest. Something Aizen returned with a quick cut to Ichigo's armpit, cutting through nerves and the brachial artery and killing the arm. They regenerated almost instantly and collided again. And yet, that's the way things are. Ichigo growled as he pushed the two of them apart. The Soul King exists to keep the different worlds separated. He dies, the world crumbles. We can change that. Aizen returned, thinking to extend an olive branch to someone that understood their place with great power.
Someone he was able to relate to. An equal. We can make the world as it should be. No, we can't,
Ichigo said, freezing Aizen in shock and disappointment.
In the end, there are things that are not meant to be changed. We are not gods, Aizen. We're just really powerful. And here I thought I finally found a kindred spirit. You disappoint me yet again, Ichigo.
Aizen lamented as he raised his blade.
It's time to end this. This fight was over the second I touched your heart.
Ichigo returned as he held out his empty hand to Aizen. The strongest aspect of my Bankai is not that vast increase of power or the manipulation of erasure.
It's the worst parts of my bloodline, infection and absorption.
Ichigo returned as Aizen felt like his soul was being pulled from his being.
Swollen.
The hybrid roared as Aizen was enveloped in blackness, all of his power being drained, and going to Ichigo until he closed his hand and Aizen was powerless. The Hogyoku was now in Ichigo's hand.
What happened?
He wheezed, trying to comprehend the utter loss of his power. Ichigo looked at the man, almost pitying him with a measure of self-loathing.
I took back my power.
All throughout our fight, you've taken more and more of my erasure into your own being. If I had to guess, it converted your Hogyoku to my will as I wanted you as strong as possible when I drained you of your power. Aizen, with great effort, forced himself to his feet while still glaring at Ichigo. I sympathize with your plight. You never had anyone on your level, in some way you wanted to fix what is honestly a broken system, and you wanted to undo some great mistakes Soul Society made. But if half the stories I've heard about Yhwach are true, I need all the power I can get. Ichigo turned away, fully confident that Aizen was no longer a threat and, if Ryukin told him the truth, was going to die soon anyway. He dispelled his Bankai before doubling over as the influx of power took its toll on him.
Ichigo! Aizen fought in anger, shambling towards the vulnerable hybrid.
Fully aware that he'd likely be destroyed just from the presence of Ichigo's power, but no longer caring about his safety. As he neared the hybrid, he saw a brief flash of light from the sky and what seemed like a burning flying to his enemy. Unconsciously, he found enough energy to push Ichigo out of the way of the attack and was impaled by the erasure blade. Ichigo came to reality soon afterward and saw Aizen with the fading blade buried in his chest.
Aizen!
Ichigo cried out, subconsciously suppressing his power for the time being, and cradling the man.
What happened? Why did you do that?
He demanded, feeling Aizen dying in his arms.
Not too sure. Kind of regretted now.
He coughed out, blood pouring from his wound.
I suppose.
I couldn't allow my greatest achievement to just die like that. The light faded from Aizen's eyes as he grew weaker.
At least, I finally found an equal.
He said his last as his body grew limp. Ichigo gently laid his body down and let his aura disintegrate Aizen's body, leaving behind Kyokusu Ugetsu and some silver dust. Both of which he quickly collected.
Goodbye, Aizen, he said as he left the battlefield. Chapter 78, Aftermath of Aizen. Yhwach's throne room. That damn brat.
Yhwach growled, angry at using much of his regained energy to fire an attack capable of killing his target and having victory ripped away from him.
There is no bringing you back to your family, is there? Not when you've perverted the most holy rite of the Quincy.
He watched the fight between Ichigo and Aizen, initially unconcerned since Aizen bore some of his Quincy erasure since the first time the Soul Reaper fought his lost child, until Ichigo used his own Oswallen. The brat dared to sever his bloodline and declare himself on par with the Quincy Emperor. He used his own power over his children to gather enough power to smite the heathen traitor. Then Aizen did a most unexpected thing and sacrificed his life. Now Ichigo was the single most dangerous being to his goal and his failed effort has set it back greatly.
Jugram soon entered to give the report on the state of the Vandenrake. Your Majesty, here's the report,
he said, bowing to his lord while carrying some singed cloth. Your children are in mourning that their brothers and sisters' lives failed to give you the power necessary to slay their traitorous brother and have vowed to strengthen themselves for the assault. He rose to his feet and made his way to the foot of the throne to present the cloth he carried, the burned remains of a Zero Squad Haori. The stern ridders that accompanied Ichigo Kurosaki and the others were unable to recover Yuzu and Karen Kurosaki from the constant watch of Ichigo's allies, but they did recover this. Yawatch took the Haori and examined it. This belonged to the head of the royal guard, Ichibe Hayasube. The emperor said, recognizing the power in the cloth. It holds the power of the Oken within. Maybe this trip had some worth after all. He mused, now that he had a way into the royal palace as soon as that damned seal of Urahara's weakens enough to allow the entire army to escape this prison world of theirs. Let them know that I am pleased with this accomplishment. They made the best of a failed mission, and I reward worthy contributions to our cause. Jugram bowed again and left the throne room to let his lord sleep. With the goatee eye? The assembled captains, lieutenants, Arrancar, and others waited for the final battle to end. For the hybrid to defeat the traitor and bring about another great change to the Goatee. Genryusai himself narrowed his eyes as he recognized the sensation of an Oswalin in the air, followed not too long after by a powerful Quincy shot that could only belong to Yawatch himself. Ichigo soon appeared before them, with Kyoka Suigetsu and the other Hogyoku in hand. Aizen is dead, he said, holding out the blade hilt first to Yamamoto and tossing the sphere to Kasuke. Tessai and Urahara wasted no time taking the Hogyoku and putting it behind a seal until they could properly lock it away. Yamamoto reached out and took Kyoka Suigetsu, examining one of the most deadly Zanpakuto he's seen in recent years. A grimace from Ichigo and a sense of distress from the sword itself gave the old dragon an idea of what happened. He returned the sword to Ichigo and addressed his student and the group. This war is now over, he announced loudly. The remaining Arrancar here are to return to Hueco Mundo. Your king will join you in due time after we decided our future actions. The Espada looked to Ichigo, who nodded in confirmation, and prompted the return to the endless desert. Ichigo rose back to his feet while Ulquiorra and Grimmjow appeared by their master's side again. Nice job, boss. Grimmjow congratulated, aiming to give Ichigo a pat on the back, only to have his hand disintegrate when it got within half a foot of Ichigo's being. Ah shit. That stings. He roared as his hand regenerated. After absorbing Aizen's soul, my Ryatsu became too strong. The hybrid explained, knowing what that much power in one being does from sheer instinct. It's taking all my concentration to hold it back this much. Not too long after that, Masaki, Ryukin, Kane, and Sora appeared, with Masaki jumping toward her son. My boy's so strong now, she cheered, with Isshin catching and holding her back. I'm so proud of you, honey, she continued, trying to hug her child before slamming an elbow into Isshin's head. Let me congratulate my little protector, she roared, before Isshin explained the dangers in getting too close. Meanwhile, Ikkaku was snickering about the little protector comment, which led to Masaki to stomp his head into the ground. And Kenpachi gave no shits, heading over to pat Ichigo on the shoulder. Two things, he said, his hand rapidly smoking from the contact. 1. You owe me a fight, and 2. I'll show you how to restrain yourself. I'm very familiar with the practice. He then went over to Unohana, who began to heal her husband's hand. While Masaki was beating Ikkaku to near death, Ryukin went over to Ichigo to explain that the 4 of the empowered humans were in charge of protecting 4 major structures that protected the real Karakura with the fake Karakura. Ichigo nodded in understanding before offering the dust he gathered from Aizen's body to the senior Quincy. That's still silver, all right, Ryukin confirmed after examining the dust. Good that you remembered to get it, he said before pouring the material into a vial and pocketing it away. Still silver is a rare mineral that comes from the victims of the holy selection that aren't immediately incinerated, Kisuke explained for the rest of the Goatee. If left alone, it coagulates in the heart and would still kill the victim. Masaki and Kane would have died if Ryukin and I didn't extract it while they were still comatose. And it's the only thing that can render Yawatch powerless for the briefest of instants. Ryukin finished. However, I am unsure whether this would affect Yawatch or not, but it would most certainly threaten Ichigo. I do have an idea of what to do with this, however. We will trust you to handle that,
Genryosei said, wanting to return to Soul Society so that they could begin the next great changes to the afterlife. In Soul Society,
the Senkamen closed behind the Gotei members while Masaki and the others returned the real Karakura town back to the world of the living. Ichigo kept a safe distance from his allies while Jin was in shackles. Before the group left the world of the living, the rest of Ichigo's allies that invaded Hueco Mundo appeared, sans the Sternritters. Something that Uriya said he would explain at the meeting later. The group didn't take 10 steps before Senjomaru appeared in front of Ichigo and instantly stripped, measured, tailored, and redressed Ichigo so quickly that barely anyone could follow what happened.
What just happened? The hybrid asked with Ulquiorra getting between his king and the strange woman. Osho said we should be down here for when you get back.
The seamstress answered, rubbing her skeletal hands. I prepared a special fabric that could help restrain your power. A mere prototype until I can refine and add more features to it. The hybrid finally took a chance to look over himself to find he was covered in black. A black Haori with a new black form-fitting shirt and pants with belt fasteners on his forearms and calves, all of which he could feel were holding back his Ryatsu. The fabric itself is the seal, while undoing one of the fasteners is like opening a valve. Huh, neat, he said, getting accustomed to the sense of wearing a seal. By the way, did you grope my butt? Ichigo asked, making Senjomaru avert her eyes and blush while smiling.
Just getting accurate measurements, she muttered, slowly walking away and disappearing before Ichigo could demand answers.
Soon after that, Ichiban and Otsu appeared with the smith holding out his hand and summoning Kyoka Suigetsu to him while the monk stood in front of the hybrid. After seeing your Tensa Zangetsu, I had a feeling the fight would end with you absorbing Aizen.
Osho explained as Ulquiorra took his place behind his lord and Yamamoto coming up next to his student.
The reasons why we're here is to see how much stronger you would become as a result of that.
Senjomaru made that outfit while Otsu had a theory he wanted to test, and you said you'd return my Haori.
The leader of the Zero Squad looked around, but saw no trace of his cloak.
Where's my Haori? So that was yours? Yurio asked, having been looking over Ichigo's new outfit since he saw the seamstress display her skill. Guess it was really important then. Yeah, that's gone,
he told them before getting back to his study of his cousin's clothes, completely ignorant of the rising anger of the captain commander. A Haori, the symbol of strength and accomplishment, reserved for only the most worthy of the ranks of leaders, and you lost it, he calmly stated before raising his cane.
And then Ichigo blew up, which almost burnt it away completely. The Quincy finished, prompting Genryosei to bash Ichigo's skull in. The resulting shockwave blew Yuryu away, left a small crater in the ground, and made a lump grow on Ichigo's head. Those aren't just given away casually.
The dragon roared at Ichigo, who backed away from his sensei's anger.
When you return to Hueco Mundo, you find that dash. It's with the Vandenrake. Yuryu interrupted, earning a more infuriated look from both Yamamoto and Ichibe.
The main reason the Sternritter spies came with us was because Yawatch gave them orders to kidnap Yuzu and Karen, which they refused to do.
Knowing they couldn't just return empty-handed since Yawatch would kill them, they took the next best thing.
The Haori of a Royal Guard member.
I'm guessing that it has some special properties?
They are made with oaken fibers and properties, Senjumura said, giving a sense of how serious the Quincy situation became.
We must begin preparations.
Yawatch has a way to access the royal palace.
That upstart Quincy would still need to get through Yamamoto and Ichigo first.
Otsu called from his place, rubbing his fingers along the body of Kyoka Suigetsu's blade while water dripped from the steel. He moved his away to reveal very small polishing stones on his fingers. This girl needed a good polish.
That bastard Aizen, treating her like a tool,
he muttered as he dried off the sword before going to Ichigo. But now, Yawatch should be more cautious of Ichigo than ever. As well he should be since this happened, he stated while tossing the blade to the hybrid, which transformed mid-flight into the Zanpakuto spirit of the sword. Something that resembled a shimmering female Aizen, as if she was simply a mirage, surprising the whole of the Gotei. You have a really spacious inner world, Ichigo, she said, getting directly into Ichigo's personal space.
When you infected Aizen, you infected everything, right down to his Zanpakuto. She turned away with a blush. It hurt at first, it was so rough, but I couldn't help but enjoy it. Ichigo and several other members of the Gotii developed a blush. Jin was snickering while Urahara and Yoruchi planned to milk this for all it was worth, and Isshin was proud that his son could even seduce swords. Yes, Zangetsu was an amazing lover, she proudly declared, causing several to face fault. Zangetsu himself appeared next to Kyoka and covered her mouth with his hand. Bottom line, Ichigo, you absorbed Kyoka Suigetsu's Zanpakuto spirit as well. The Zanpakuto explained. Meaning you now have the power of one of the strongest Kido-type swords. For the time being, however, you're going to have to work to gain and master that power. Ichigo nodded in agreement, preferring to earn his strengths by learning them. You better get ready for the new training partner. Meanwhile, I have no idea how Shiraiki and Hiniko are going to react to this, he said, out loud and mentally to his master, as both spirits returned to Ichigo's inner world with both blades appearing at his hip. At least that was addressed. Yamamoto said, already thinking of ways to help train his student in his new blade. But, there is still more to take care of. He turned to his soldiers. I call for a captain's meeting, we shall decide the fate of Jin Ikamaru. Jin's trial. The captains assembled in the meeting hall, with Jin in shackles before them all. The whole trial was a farce and they all knew it. Jin was an ally, but he acted of his own accord. They needed as many strong soldiers as they could get, but they still had to punish Jin for his actions. For the first time since Genryosai took Ichigo in as his disciple, he forbade Ichigo from playing any part in this meeting. Jin Ikamaru, you stand accused of treason. Yamamoto called out, moving quickly to avoid a waste of time so they can make preparations for the Quincy. You've stated your sole mission was to slay Aizen for his actions, but it was all of your own accord. How do you plead? Guilty, Captain Commander. Ikamaru said with a smile on his face. I did not care how or how much blood I'd need to spill. So long as Aizen died, I would be content. He bowed before the captains and knelt, ready to receive his punishment. I only ask that you let Ranjiku visit me in the maggot's nest. You jump to conclusions, Ikamaru. The dragon said, making Jin look to Yamamoto in surprise. You are not sentenced to the maggot's nest. You are banished from Soul Society as a whole, to return to the deserts of Hueco Mundo. Jin ground his teeth, about to lash out to the ancient captain before the man continued. Once there, you are to establish a new Squad 16, meant to hunt and regulate the number of dangerous hollows. You want me to be in charge of the Arrancar in Hueco Mundo? He asked, now more confused than angry. Why not send Ichigo? He's their king now and they would obey him. More importantly, this seems more like a slap on the wrist than what I expected. You've committed some serious crimes while getting close to Aizen. Urahara said, earning nods from some of the more level-headed captains. But Ichigo is still training, now more than ever since he now has new powers to master, and you are a capable warrior. We can't afford to lose any of those. The scientist explained as Jin wondered what that could mean. Aizen is dead, what else could? Jin's eyes opened in shock. That arrow that killed Aizen. That's what Ichigo meant. I was going to tell him about an actual threat. Toshiro quoted, back from when he and Jin watched Ichigo during his first fight with Aizen. Something he'd barely heard during the fight. His name is Yawatch. The ancient Quincy emperor that necessitated the creation of the original Gotii. The head captain continued. He has spent the last millennium preparing an army to attack us. This actually explains a lot now that I think about it. Jin admitted, rethinking his stance on his punishment. But why are you creating a squad in Hueco Mundo? More than that, a squad made solely of Arrancar? Tests done by Koratsuchi revealed that Quincy are actually very vulnerable to hollow erasure. Urahara answered. It's like their main weakness. Hence why we want a squad of Arrancar. Jin thought for a moment before rising back to his feet. Very well. I'll become the captain of this Squad 16. He said before giving another fox-like grin.
But first, there's something I want done. With Ichigo. The hybrid stood in front of the sealed meeting hall, waiting for the other captains to finish. In the short time Ichigo studied under Gen Ryosai, he's been able to pick up on a few things. In this case, he was forbidden from getting involved with Jin's trial despite Yamamoto's insistence that Ichigo watch and learn the burdens of leadership. That meant that they already knew what they would be doing to Jin, that Ichigo might disagree with some aspect of it, and he would argue against it. Whether he made any good points or not was irrelevant, they could now focus on the Quincy threat and everyone wanted to prepare for that. He continued to stand there, until he got a visitor. "Hey there, hero." He turned to see Ranjiko heading towards him. "How's it going? I figured you'd be in there with them." "Not this time apparently, meaning whatever they're planning is something I might argue against." Ichigo returned, facing the meeting hall again. He didn't do a lot to help, needing to be as discreet as he could, but he did help with what he could. "Besides, if anything bad happened, you'd be sad," he said, reminding both himself and Ranjiko of what Jin asked. To Ichigo, that meant securing her happiness, which meant keeping Jin around. He stiffened up when he felt her hug him from behind. "You've already done so much," she told him, making him question how much he actually did. "You were there when I was depressed that he left Soul Society, you made sure my current captain returned during the Oin incident, you kept Jin alive, you see more to me than my boobs. I was actually okay with the lack of one-on-one time because you were always so busy between and during the various crises, and I'm closer to Haniko than I've ever been before." He turned to face her again. "I'll admit, for all the teasing and flirting, I wasn't ready to really fall for you, but now." "Ranjiko," Ichigo said, smiling down to the now blushing lieutenant. The two began leaning in to kiss each other when they were interrupted by a silver fox. "Well, nice to see you two getting along," Jin called out happily, shocking the two into separating away from each other and burning with embarrassment. "Well, now that I've had my fun, I figure I should tell you what's going on," he said, losing his smile and becoming more serious than his usual self. "I'm banished to Hueco Mundo to turn your loyal Arrancar into a whole new squad." The announcement surprised the two, Ichigo admitting to himself that he'd probably protest that simply because of the whole banished part. "You'll need to return to Hueco Mundo as well, Ichigo. Let the Hollows and Arrancar see their new king." "I'll wait till you're ready, I need to see Urahara at the R&D department anyway," he said as he began walking away. He suddenly stopped to wave Ichigo over to him. "Yeah, what is it?" Ichigo asked as he got closer to Jin, who wrapped an arm around the hybrid and started whispering in his ear. "I do trust you with her, but remember this." He spoke with a deathly calm tone that promised a slow end. "After Aizen got her hurt, I spent centuries getting into the perfect position to kill him. It may have failed, but you now know how patient and determined I can be. If you hurt her, I don't care how long it will take, I will find a way to kill you. Do we have an understanding?" He finished with a predatory smile, which was ruined with a loud crack on his head. "I'm sure he knows, now stop threatening my boyfriend." Ranjika deadpanned, her sheath resting on the lump that was now on Jin's head. Sorry. Just being a bit protective." Jin apologized, walking away from the two. "Go and be happy, Ranjiko." He waved goodbye, flashing the pair a smile before disappearing. "Only took a few centuries for him to give me a proper goodbye," she thought with a smile as the two leaned against one another again. "By the way, what was with Toshiro?" Ichigo suddenly asked. "I show up and he was an adult?" "The true power of his Bankai," she answered. "Takes a while to mature like that." Squad 12, with the Fullbringers, 3 days later. "So you managed to find another level to the Fullbring," Jinjo said while Chad was getting a few tests done. "And you didn't come up with a name for it in all this time? Why not full power or full release?" He ranted, slowly listing off more names while the other Fullbringers ignored him. "Ignoring the terrible naming idea, I'm sure you're fine, Sato," Jackie said, patting the big guy on the back. "You were already pushing your limits and just went too far too fast. These guys can fix you right up." Chad gave the dark American a smile, Tsukishima and Juriko trying to stop Jinjo from embarrassing himself with the names he was thinking of while Riroka ignored them, when Urahara came back with a clipboard in hand.
If you still want to give that Fullbring stage a name, I have a suggestion. Forbidden. Kisuke said with no cheer and none of the laid-back attitude.
Sato, you burned through at least 20 years of your life with that and actually increased the chance of soul suicide upon your mortal death. The rest of the Fullbringers froze in shock while Chad seemed resigned, like he knew that was the case. I'm not sure if this will be the case with the others, but from now on I never want to hear you using that if you can avoid it, Chad.
Understood. The Fullbringer nodded. If it's not too much trouble, don't tell the others.
Especially Ichigo. He asked, making the captain raise his eyebrow while the others still tried to process the news.
I don't want him to worry about me.
There was a long pause before the scientist sighed.
Fine, but if you use that power again, I'm telling him. He said as he left the group, heading to the basement to continue the Arrancar experiments. Squad 12 Underground Facility. Mayuri. How's progress? Urahara called out as he entered the chambers housing the more questionable experiments of Squad 12.
Most of the squad took to calling it Mayuri's playground, where the usual ethics and morality Urahara imposed on the man were gone.
There's some debate among those in the know about it, but he gets away because of one thing. The benefits outweigh the cost.
I can hate you all I want, Urahara, but you always bring the best things. The modified man said with glee.
The tests showed positive and Ikamaru is ready, he's got what he wanted.
He handed the file to his superior, who skimmed through with approval. He figured a merged Hogyoku would be easier to control and sealed it away with its own power. The only thing left was to try and sever the connection to Ichigo, but everyone thought it would be best if it stayed connected to the hybrid.
Hopefully this can keep Jin's Bankai safe from the Vandenreika's medallion as well.
Urahara mumbled as he turned back to his lieutenant.
What of Ashido and the twins?
This earned a tired groan from him. The three are being kept in stasis until I can figure that puzzle out. He insists they stay together, and I haven't figured out how to give their Zanpakuto soul-cleansing properties. I remember that particular headache with my modified Quincy bows. The captain agreed, shuddering at that week of sleepless nights.
Any theories?
Merging with Aswachi, rewriting the blades at the soul level, figuring out how Kurosaki can eat hollows and purify them in the process, none of which I really want to test and lose my test subjects. He said, and interrupted when Urahara opened his mouth. I'm never going to use that damn ball of yours, that's cheating. The scientist turned to his superior, disgust obvious in his glare. There's no denying that the Hogyoku is indeed a marvelous creation, but as a scientist I cannot tolerate its use or existence.
You made the ultimate tool of creation and innovation, but what use is any of that if you just gain the results you want right away?
Scientists must embrace the struggle of dead ends and failures, always finding a new way or a new possibility. Even Ichigo Kurosaki, the closest that any of us have seen to a perfect being, still strives to become stronger. Ever growing, ever improving, even if he becomes the most powerful being in existence, he'd still look for a way to improve himself.
If the Hogyoku just gives us the end result, then what is the point? Where's the knowledge, or even the discovery? How are you still a scientist if you still use it? He demanded, leaving Urahara without an answer. Different subject then. What have you done with Yami? Urahara asked as Mayuri handed him another file.
Not sure if that Quincy was lucky or one of the best shots ever. He said, holding up a pill the size of a grape. He severed everything short of being lethal when he carved up that lug's brain.
He's still alive and stuck like he was when those three dropped that giant off.
He regenerates and now serves as a constant supply of tissue matter that we've used to make these.
Just one pill can increase an Arrancar's strength by 10%. Would be more, but I think they'd prefer a pill that's easy to swallow.
And Ichigo can use these to reward the Arrancar loyal to him.
Urahara said, already thinking of ways to use them to gain loyalty. And I might have some of his Reisure.
Mayuri finished, earning a look from the captain. Just in case there's a few rebels that can be put to better use.
Urahara shrugged and began to leave. Keep on the Arankar Zanpakuto Mayuri. That's your top priority. Yamamoto wants that squad ready ASAP, he said as he left. With Jin and Ichigo. Everything ready? Ichigo asked his silver-haired companion, still bearing his ever-present smile in his Arankar robes with a Haori with a 16 on the back. We've put this trip back to Hueco Mundo off for long enough. Patience, your majesty. Jin said, putting an emphasis on majesty while knowing Ichigo would hate it. I'm willing to bet that the Espada have restored order and are merely waiting for your return. Ichigo rolled his eyes before opening a garganta leading into the endless deserts of Hueco Mundo. Now, are you sure you can handle this? Ichigo asked again, for what seemed to be the 100th time. Jin's answer was to raise his hand and summon a white fox hollow mask. I'm certain I'll fit right in. And with that, the pair jumped into the void of the precipice world and began the journey to Ichigo's new kingdom. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. What happened to Tosen? The fight was immediately out of Tosen's favor the moment he gained eyesight with his Resurrection. He kept all of his focus on Grimmjow, which left openings that Kamamura and Kensei capitalized on without mercy. Soon, the vengeance-fueled man was beaten and restrained by his former friend and former captain while they watched Ichigo destroy Aizen. My sight, it's fading. Tosen thought as the vision he once enjoyed was fading away again. But I refuse to acknowledge your justice, Grimmjow. He glared at the panther, charging a Sirocornea that he aimed at Grimmjow's head. Without looking back, Grimmjow pointed his elbow at Tosen's head and fired one of his bombs. He intended to cancel out the coming Siro, but he shot it too soon. The wet squelch let Grimmjow know he made a mistake. This guy was wanted dead or alive, right? He asked as the two captains gaped at him and the now headless body. Senjimaro gets a request. Excuse me. The seamstress heard as she and the other Zero Squad members were getting ready to depart for the royal realm. She turned to find Ranjiko Matsumoto heading for her. Yes? Can I help you? She asked as the lieutenant caught up to her. Yeah, I noticed there's a problem with Ichigo's new outfit. Ranjiko said, earning a slight ire from the seamstress as she takes great pride in her craft. The glare directed at the lieutenant was enough to make her realize she needed to hurry up. It's just that, Ichigo is not single and has a lot of women he needs to keep happy. Which means a certain part needs to. She trailed off, hoping that the message got across. The blush on Senjimaro indicated that it had. Give me a minute. She told the gathered group as she disappeared. Seconds later, they heard Ichigo yelling again. She reappeared with blood dripping from her nose. There's a zipper now. Have fun. She said, getting a thumbs up from Ranjiku, which she returned. Realizing helplessness. This is unacceptable. One of the judges of the new Central 46 roared. That boy is becoming far too dangerous. Before they nearly filled all the seats of the body, but with the purge of nobility after the Kasumiyaji incident, they were back to barely a fifth of their number. Stop wasting your breath. One of the sages told him. There's nothing we can do. We're still under martial law until the Quincy War is over, and even after that, Yamamoto has made it clear that the Central 46's power will be severely crippled. We are the true authority of Soul Society. Another sage argued. And under the rule of our predecessors, look at how much damage was wrought. Another judge argued. Most of Ichigo Kurosaki's tenure as a Shinigami was spent undoing the most severe of Soul Society's mistakes. The Central 46 is an outdated system that only leads to more problems than it resolves. Another judge said. You speak of blasphemy. Another judge yelled out while another sage stood up. No, we speak of change. A majority of the judges and sages stood up with him. We presented a new idea to the captain commander of a new system. Some new councils for the civilians of Soul Society that would render this body moot. And he approved. Chapter 79, King of Hollows. Hueco Mundo. Ichigo and Jin soon came out of the Garganta, only a few miles away from the Palace of Las Noches this time, and took a moment to survey their surroundings. Despite the curiosity, the only thing of any note was the palace itself. Charred from the keto spell and broken from all the fighting, it was still a bit of a surprise to see it being reconstructed. The walls seemed to be crawling as building materials moved along with long tendrils of sand assisting in the construction. Makes sense that they'd rebuild, Ichigo finally said, since there doesn't seem like there's much else to do here. There really isn't. Jin admitted, now glad that he had his new job. Before they could even take their first step, a mound of sand started to rise until it took the full form of Runaganga. Jin didn't react, only smiling, while Ichigo braced himself to use the ice spell, Hyoga Siren. Ichigo Kurosaki. Master Ichigo. The giant sand hollow said to the hybrid. Word has spread that you have slain Lord Aizen and claimed the throne. Your castle is still being repaired, but the denizens of Las Noches await your return. He held out his hand in front of the Soul Reapers. If you'll have me, I'll bring you to the castle. Ichigo was hesitant, having been enemies with the hollows of Hueco Mundo not too long ago, to take the sand creature up on his offer. Jin climbed onto the hand first before letting the hybrid know of the lack of danger. He wasn't entirely convinced, but it was enough to get on Runaganga's hand, but he never once dropped his readiness to use the ice keto spell. The Sand Guardian kept his word, and within minutes, the Shinigami pair found themselves in front of the gates of Las Noches. A massive blank double door that was as plain as the rest of the outside of the building. The hollow let Ichigo and Jin down before pushing the doors open, revealing an Arrancar with a bull skull mask with 2 lines of human skull Arrancar going into the palace. Lord Ichigo, the Arrancar said with a bow, I am Rudborn Chelut, leader of the Exequias and the guardian of the palace. Your procession is ready. As he said that, the lines of Arrancar faced each other, drew their swords, and made a tunnel for their king. This will guide you to the inner palace and throne room, where your espada await. Ichigo looked down the procession that seemed to go on for miles. Is it a straight line? He asked, in earning a nod of confirmation from both Rudborn and Jin. Excellent. Ichigo undid the straps on his ankles, grabbed Jin, and tested the limits of his speed, reaching their destination within seconds. Starting to get tired of this king stuff, he griped as he redid the straps to contain his power. You'll only have to deal with it for so much longer. Jin responded, heading for the staircase so they could ascend to the throne room. Come on, Lord Ichigo, you subjects await, he said happily, laughing as Ichigo released an irritated growl. They made their way through the palace halls before finally coming upon the throne room. Jin immediately entered and loudly proclaimed Ichigo's arrival. Arrancar of Las Noches. Your king has arrived. Ichigo entered the room, seeing the few Arrancar he recognized and many others he did not. The main exceptions were the 2 standing on both sides of his new throne, Ulquiorra standing on the left and Grimmjow sitting on the right. There it is. My throne. The word still felt alien to the hybrid as he entered the room and made his way toward the stone chair. As he went, every Arrancar he passed knelt in submission to him. Some seemed more hesitant, but all bowed. Jin stood before the throne before stepping aside, letting Ichigo leap to his seat. He stood before it, brushing his fingers against the arms before sitting down. Wow! This chair is very uncomfortable. The Gotii has come to a decision in regards to Hueco Mundo. Jin called out to the Arrancar. Your king will now deliver that news, he said before looking to Ichigo and nodding. In the not-too-distant future, an army of Quincy will rise and attack, Ichigo announced, telling the Arrancar of the coming blood war. They want to destabilize the balance that allows our worlds to exist, disrupt the flow of souls, and destroy everything. They fear the Hollows because your erasure is toxic to them, so we believe they will strike here first. Then they will do everything they can to destroy the Soul King, the linchpin of the balance. To prepare for this, it was deemed that I conquer Hueco Mundo and prepare an army of Arrancar to counteract the Quincy. Thus, you are now members of Squad 16, with Jin Ikamaru as your captain and Lord Steward of Las Noches. When I am not here, he is your leader. He waited a moment to see if anyone had any complaints. Do not be afraid to speak up. Let your voices and concerns be heard. Were those 3 Quincy in the military uniforms part of this new enemy? Surachi asked, actually having met the Spiriters.
They are, but they are also on the edge of betraying their side.
Ichigo responded. Many of the Quincy are under the delusion that there will be anything for them after the fighting is done.
They are mistaken, but many are religiously devoted to their leader. Many of the Arrancar groaned, and Ichigo swore he heard someone say, "Great, an army of Zamari."
What is the current plan of action, Your Majesty? The one known as Halabel asked. Many looked to him for guidance. Jin nodded before revealing a jar. You are all to train yourselves to become stronger, Ichigo declared, standing from his throne. Strengthen yourselves, strengthen your allies, gather more to our ranks.
As of now, you will no longer consume other hollows. You will refine your abilities, bring others to our side, and I will reward those who succeed with more power.
Jin tossed him the jar, which Ichigo caught and brought out a single pill. These will strengthen any Arrancar that consumes it. He threw it to Dordoni, who caught it. Show them. Swallow. The former Privaron did so, and everyone felt the slight increase in power coming from the Arrancar.
Follow me, and I promise a new era for all, Ichigo said, before displaying the weight of his Ryatsu and his power to them.
And I will protect it.
With the Spiriters, the 3 Sternritters returned to their base of operations safely, not happy with how their mission turned out or with the results of their success. After Ichigo departed from Hueco Mundo to finish the fight with Aizen, Basbi, and the others stated they had to report to Yhwach and pray that the Emperor would be benevolent. They decided to retrieve the Zero Squad Haori that Ichigo had and discarded during his fight with Black, tracing the energy to inside a field of searing black sand. Yhwach was pleased that they returned with something useful, but that was little comfort knowing that they lost over 200 Quincy in His Majesty's attempt to kill Ichigo.
How successful do you think they'll be? Candace asked her companions.
The loss of soldiers in the Vandenrake was recently being countered by a new recruiting process. Other Sternritters were being sent out into the world to gather would-be Quincy to join them. Any that were too weak would still fuel Yhwach's regeneration, and as Iznat and Gremi Thumos proved, anyone is fair game to join.
Who wouldn't want to be one with His Majesty? Basbi said, sounding as sincere as he could out of fear that Yhwach was watching them. For their reward, Yhwach empowered them further,
sharing more of his soul and had them drink more of his blood.
With not only His Majesty but the whole of the Sternritters watching, they had to comply. Our ranks will swell. Bambietta returned, trying to match Basbi's tone. My question is, what did His Majesty mean by Ichigo and Yuryu are no longer my children?
It sounds like they severed their bond to him completely. Or are too dangerous to try and return to us.
Candace finished. Either way, our mission is to find out what they did and kill them.
They nodded, knowing that whatever Ichigo and Yuria did is the only way they were going to get out of this situation alive.
With Yamamoto,
the head captain was going through the reports of everything that occurred since Aizen's defeat. The progress in research on hollows in Arrancar, the casualty reports of hollows rampaging for a single day after Aizen's defeat, the new system that the good members of Central 46 offered, all for the sake of trying to block out what was to come. Being told of his return, seeing the evidence, none of it really prepared him to encounter what he considered the darkest times of his long life. He turned his gaze to the constant reminder he had of his shameful past, a hanging picture of himself in the fires of his Bankai. That thing was a monster that appeared when Soul Society was already a mess. The words he spoke to a young Kairaku echoed in his mind, and messed things up even more.
But, it will never appear again. If only that were true, he said, still staring at the picture. Some part of him was telling himself to not fight, that Ichigo was strong enough to battle Yhwach, but he refused to entertain that thought fully. Yhwach was his responsibility, the last fragment of a troubled time he'd need to rectify, and he would rather die before running from that. It would likely end in his death, but he'd never be able to face his students again if he hid behind them. Do you think he'll be able to properly handle it? He heard his Zanpakuto ask him. The power and responsibility you are planning to leave to him? No one else in this world is more worthy, my old friend, he responded as he pulled out the latest journal he had on Ichigo's training. He has plenty of time to prove that. Hueco Mundo. You ready, King?
Grimjow asked Ichigo, standing across the sand and ready for the next round. After the meeting, he ordered them all to take some personal time to themselves. Get acclimated to the new situation with a new king and Jin as their other leader. One girl in Halibel's group was vocal in her distrust of Ichigo before getting into an argument with the other fraction in her group. It ended when Halibel sent them away, telling him they usually fight but so long as Ichigo earns her loyalty then he has theirs.
Ready, Grimjow?
Ichigo responded, unsheathing Kyoka Suigetsu. He closed his eyes, focusing on the lessons Yamamoto had the time to teach him. Shatter, Kyoka Suigetsu. The two dashed at each other, Ichigo to his left and Grimjow to his. Ichigo circled around the panther, but Grimjow turned and got ready to block. Ichigo stopped just short of making contact.
How long? After you passed me.
The Arrancar answered, making Ichigo growl in frustration.
Damn it!
He swung the blade and created a massive explosion of sand as he vented. Grimjow stood and waited as the hybrid took the time to calm down from another failed practice attempt. His teacher made the lesson clear, but putting it into practice was proving to be difficult. After taking Aizen's Zanpakuto for his own, Genryusai explained the three different types of Zanpakuto. Zangetsu was a melee kind, Kyoka Suigetsu was a Kido type, and his own Ryujin Jaka was elemental, and being different types meant different approaches to combat. Melee was about being faster and stronger than your opponent, which was what Ichigo excelled in. Kido was more mental and how to use those abilities, which was why Aizen was so dangerous. Elemental was about control, too little and you are ineffective while too much would cause collateral damage. What Ichigo was doing in his training was going to an entirely different fighting method, one that was less about relying on instinct and instead focusing on thought. You have to maintain the image you want them to see in your mind, Ichigo. Suigetsu tried to help, reminding him for the fifth time that he needs to maintain the visual for himself for it to work on others.
Maybe you should take a break, she suggested as Ulquiorra came to them. Grimjow, take 5.
Ichigo called out, gaining a shrug from the panther as Ichigo went to the bat.
What's the news?
The Espada are acclimating well, most of them are planning out their own training schedules with Stark being the exception.
Ulquiorra reported. It seems he has something he wants to talk to you about. Neliel on the other hand.
I'm unsure what she wants exactly, but it involves you. The only other thing is that Loli Avern and Minoli Malia were planning an assassination.
They are currently in the dungeon. Ichigo took a moment to think the matter over.
I'll go talk to Stark and Neliel about what they wanted.
He decided, remembering that Neliel was the one that watched over his sisters. As for the other two, who were they exactly? They were Aizen's aides, just some numeros.
The Arrancar told his king. Though, with Loli's devotion, some might think it was more than that. I think Oraheim was the one that spared them, I'll let her try to talk to them.
He grabbed Kyoka Suigetsu and sheathed her.
But for now, I'll talk to Stark and then to Neliel.
Grimjow. That's enough practice for today.
The hybrid called out to the panther before disappearing in a burst of speed. Kurosaki House. Ishin was now coming home from, hopefully, being done with the Aizen affair. After the Arrancar returned to Hueco Mundo to inform the realm of their new king, the hollows that hid during Aizen's regime came out of the woodwork. They thought that the Soul Reapers would be too weak to counteract them after the war and tried to take advantage of the situation. The sudden attack caught them off guard and led to an explosive casualty rise until Masaki and himself led the counterattack and pushed them back to the deserts. A part of him probably felt like he overreacted in the fight, but he didn't want to risk the chance of losing his daughters again. He entered the house and was greeted to the delightful scent of Masaki's home cooking and his daughters setting the table.
Something normal, something calming, something welcome to come home to.
The only physical change was a small altar with Khan's stuffed lion body and some incense burning to the sides of it.
He was good to this family. He thought as he gave silent thanks to the mod soul before joining his family for dinner. Dad, I think it's time for Yuzu and I to get Zanpakuto. Karen said as Ishin sat down.
Masaki tensed up at the thought of her baby girls fighting more, but still understood the reason why they would think so. Ishin looked over his daughters to get a read on them. Karen seems confident in her stance and Yuzu seemed to support that decision. The captain let out a tired sigh. That's for your teachers at Shino Academy to decide. He responded as he took a long drink of beer Masaki had ready for him. But if you really want to prove yourselves, I can get you permission to join the next field exercise on the outskirts of Karakura. What happens there will be up to you and your teachers. He finished, not wanting to abuse his authority as a captain or a noble and make it seem like nepotism was why his daughters succeeded. A dark figure stared at the lone image before him, the image of a dark god of death crushing a would-be king deity and robbing him of his soul. The scene shifted to two girls, wearing white and waiting patiently for their savior. The figure smiled as he began to plan. Soon. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. The new government. Okay, here's what I'm thinking. A judge of the former C-46 said as he and his fellows met with Yamamoto. Each district will elect a council of 5 to discuss the happenings in that district. Each district can also elect 1 to 2 other representatives for a Rukon representative house. Each Rukon can have 1 official to meet with the great noble house leaders to discuss the affairs of Soul Society. He finished with a smile, staring pointedly at Yamamoto. There will also be a chairman overseer of that group. Ideally, you after retirement from military service. I wonder if I can fake my death. The ancient dragon thought, knowing how much of a struggle this was going to be to actually work. More practice. You sitting on your throne. Stark yawned out as he and the other Espada helped Ichigo with his image training with Kyoka Suijutsu. Ichigo would think of the image and they would tell him when they saw it and Jin would offer ideas. Still looks pretty rough. Now you in Bankai. The wings are a bit off though. Ulquiorra said next. Then the other men in the Aaron car gained a huge blush. Halibel, can you really bend like that? He asked the female Aaron car before hearing a loud smack and Jin went flying. He's not allowed near me during practice anymore. Ichigo said, secretly pocketing the picture of Halibel doing yoga that Jin showed him. Chapter 80, Damned Return. Las Noches, Stark's Palace. The new king of the Hollows made his way to the palace of the previous Primera, once again wondering what to do with the title of Espada when he had less than 10 Arrancar, wondering what was on the mind of the one with the aspect of isolation. He was being led by a silent exequias through the empty hallways of Stark's palace, noticing a recurring element throughout Las Noches. The entire palace of Las Noches was gigantic and is populated by so few of anyone, barely more than 20 after the Winter War. Ichigo made a mental note to see if it could be rectified before they stopped in front of a doorway. Is this where Coyote Stark resides? Ichigo asked his guide, earning a mute nod from the figure. Thank you. Dismissed. He said, prompting the exequias to flash away, before knocking on the door. It was soon opened by a young girl Arrancar with a lopsided horned helmet covering her green hair and left eye along with wearing a rather scandalous outfit, given that she looked like a child. Lord Ichigo. She greeted with a bow of her head. I am Lillinette Gingerback, Stark's Frachen. Follow me. She walked back into the tower with Ichigo close behind. I appreciate you coming to speak with him. Stark's he hasn't been himself lately. Ulquiorra told me he's usually lazing about or sleeping. Ichigo returned, going off what he was told about the Espada he hadn't met. My dad said that his conversation with Stark involved myself and my power. What is the problem he's having? He asked before they came upon another door, Lillinette turning to the hybrid. I may be his other half, but he insists on dealing with this himself. She said, making Ichigo raise an eyebrow at the other half bit. Stark and I only ever had each other before Aizen came along, and now you show up and reveal just how unlucky we were in the beginning. Without another word, she disappeared and left Ichigo with only one real choice, meeting with the Arrancar in question. He pushed the doors apart and found Coyote Stark facing him, sitting on a pile of pillows with his fingers crossed in front of him. I can't remember how many times I wished to be weak. He suddenly said, looking to his king. To no longer be so strong that everything around me simply died. One day, in an effort to escape that isolation, I split myself in two,
becoming myself and Lilynette. He stood up and walked to Ichigo. Not too long after that, Aizen found and approached me, offering the chance I longed for. I served him until the war and you appeared, proving to be like my complete opposite. I was alone because of my power, you had companions despite yours. Answer me this, how could you be so strong and still have companions? Was I just that unfortunate to be a hollow? Would it have been different if I was a soul reaper? Would I have those same friendships that you do if I was a protector? Ichigo took in everything Stark said to him, closing in eyes and thought as he pondered the matter. It may be that it was your bad luck in being a hollow, Ichigo admitted, opening his eyes to match Stark's gaze. But you also proved that theory wrong with the existence of Lilynette. He held up a hand and generated a large ball of Raishur. The burden of the mighty has always been controlling their power. The common way is when Shinigami apply seals to ourselves. A random symbol appeared on the ball and it shrank to a quarter of its size. That was because they've learned how to do so for the purpose of wandering the world of the living without causing a disturbance. The sphere returned to its normal size before splitting in two, one big and one small. From what I understand of the Arrancar, you've learned to separate yourselves into parts. However, it also seems that you were the first to do this practice and establish it for future Arrancar. The spheres disappeared as Ichigo refocused on Stark. You created something that didn't exist before, did so because you wanted something and found how to get it. You might be the greatest of the Arrancar, finding your own way when the others followed or stayed isolated. I certainly never felt great. The coyote returned, averting his gaze from the hybrid. I hated every single day of that isolation. He soon felt a hand on his shoulder to see something he never saw before with Aizen, a genuinely kind smile. You are the only one isolating yourself now, the Hollow King told him. You have your fellow Arrancar, Jin, so many more friends to make, and most of all, your other half. Ichigo looked to the side, prompting Lilynette to come out of hiding and joining Stark's side. So, if it helps, I now appoint you as the protector of Arrancar. Which means you now have to go and talk with the others. Stark let out a quick snort of laughter at his king's subtle way of telling him his aspect no longer applied. And while you're at it, gather more hollows that might make for good Arrancar. This castle is way too empty, he shouted as he turned and left, leaving the coyote alone with themselves. Come on, Stark, Lilynette shouted, pulling along her other half. You heard the king. Time to get to work with our allies. Stark let out a tired groan of irritation, trying to disguise the smile he was now wearing. Urahara Shoten / Squad 15 barracks, with Isshin. They have been doing well in class, Yamamoto said to Isshin via video communication, who had just told him what his daughters wanted. But, while I certainly believe that they've had plenty of experience and training, I still disagree with letting them in on the live exercise. With all respect, sir, I wouldn't have it any other way. Isshin returned to the dragon. In comparison to their brother, their training has been far easier. Which isn't even taking into consideration the difference in power and ability, which was like comparing a match to a bonfire, he said while thinking back to the years of training he put his kids through. Ichigo was almost half their age when he started, and they got started in junior high, all while trying to keep it to a hidden minimum to avoid suspicions. I'll break the news to them. I didn't say no, Isshin, the head captain interrupted, earning a confused look from the father. I simply disagree with the idea. They are still far too young, but they do have the potential, and whether I admit it or not, they are Ichigo's ultimate vulnerabilities. I dread to think of what might happen if Yhwach got his hands on them, he said, making Isshin think about reliving his worst nightmare with someone more vile than Aizen. So you'll have them participate? The Squad 15 captain asked. They'll watch first, Yamamoto answered. I'm going to ask Jin and Ichigo to gather the weakest combat-capable hollows possible to increase the difficulty of the exercise. Since it's happening in your jurisdiction, I trust your division will be there to contain the matter. Isshin nodded in affirmative of his leader's orders. Good. Afterward, we can have Yuzu and Karen get their practice in Las Noches, training grounds, with Ichigo.
Ichigo found himself in a rare moment of solitude and peace. Jin received the order to gather cannon fodder hollows for the latest live exercise of the academy students, and instead of joining him, like he was asked, Dordoni insisted on doing it instead. Stark was getting better acquainted with the other Arrancar while Ulquiorra and Grimjaw went out to recruit more Arrancar so the coyote could learn to bond with his allies. Thus, with nothing better to do, Ichigo tried to work on visualization exercises to better utilize Kyoka Suigetsu's Shirkai. He sat in a meditative state, trying to create the image in his mind as Reisher gathered and took form in front of him. It was a black feather from his Bankai state, or that was what he was going for. It was the general form but none of the finer details, just a shape with an aura of red around it. He released a sigh of frustration as the Reisher dissipated. "Trouble, Lord Ichigo?" he heard from behind, seeing Halibel with her Frachin coming toward him. "Difficulty in your training?" "Unfortunately, yes," he said, rising from his seat. "It's just like when I tried to manifest my Bao." He activated his Quincy Bao, only getting an ethereal cloud of black Reisher shaped like a Bao. "I could get by with my power, but Kyoka Suigetsu demands finer control, demands that I think more in battle, and I've always fought with my instincts. Acting without thought. And if you're in a fight, you'll need to focus on your thoughts." Halibel added, understanding the difficulty her liege was facing. "If you would have me, I'll spar with you," she offered, earning a raised eyebrow from Ichigo. "You are aware of my power, right?" he asked, getting a nod in return. "So why ask?" "I also know that you are being restricted in the power you can currently access," she said, pointing at the seals on his clothes. "And I've been wanting to fight you myself." She grabbed her hollowed blade and stood ready to fight. "I've heard what others say about you, but I want to see for myself the kind of person you are." Ichigo unsheathed Kyoka Suigetsu and readied himself to fight. "Shatter, Kyoka Suigetsu," he whispered as Halibel charged at him. He tried and failed at creating an illusion of him moving one way as the Arrancar intercepted him and tried to slice his side. Ichigo growled in frustration while the blade failed to cut through the clothes Senjimara made, getting more and more irritated with his failures. "What am I doing wrong, Kyoka?" he roared mentally, dashing away from Halibel and attempting another illusion where he went off to the side. "I was hoping you'd recognize it for yourself," she told him as Halibel shot blasts of energy at him, "but that probably won't happen since you've always pushed yourself." The shark charged a Zero in her blade and swung it at her king, which Ichigo cut through with ease. "You've got to be kidding me. I'm trying too hard? That cliché," he roared angrily as Halibel activated her Resurrection. "I actually fell into that." The dark-skinned Arrancar shot a barrage of water droplet bullets that Ichigo either dodged or deflected. "You seem to think that Aizen created images out of nothing. That there was never anything when you thought you saw something." The Zanpakuto returned as Halibel closed the distance and tried an overhead strike on Ichigo. But that was not what he did to make himself so dangerous. It was always misdirection, seeing one thing as another. "That's what I'm trying to." Ichigo knocked the massive blade aside and thrust his palm into Halibel, sending her flying back. "You forget how much you need to alter. A single feint can end a fight instantly," she said before going silent, confident that her wielder could figure out the rest. Faith that wasn't misplaced as Ichigo closed his eyes, focused his mind, and got ready to strike. Halibel raised her blade to her right side to block a swing, only to change and block from a different angle despite Ichigo not moving. Physically at least, in his mind he was readying a new strike to Halibel's shoulder. She blocked, only to see the blade coming for her opposite side and getting cut. She took a step back as she saw Ichigo pull his blade away and into a high stance. Reacting automatically, she prepared for an overhead strike and was rewarded with a cut across her thighs that she only saw at the last second. For her, Ichigo was moving one way 1 second and another the next. A single feint can end a fight, and a single second is all it takes to change one completely. Ichigo recited one of the many main principles of combat that his teachers drilled into his skull, that the course of a fight can change instantly. The spar continued with Ichigo getting as much practice with his illusions as he felt comfortable with, trying to avoid damaging his partner too much. Halibel was benefiting as well, her reflexes sharpening with every strike. She was able to see the real attack at the last second and successfully block about 25% of the time. She was about to perform another attack when Ichigo sheathed his blade.
"That's enough. Thank you, Halibel,"
he said, freezing her on the spot.
"Are you sure, Lord Ichigo?"
she asked, surprised with the thanks. Barrigan would toss away lives without care while Aizen would offer his kind words, which were always hollow to the observant. This was the first time the Arrancar heard someone with such power say such words and actually mean them. "I feel we're making progress in this spar, so should we not?" Ichigo lightly pushed her and she felt a sense of vertigo from blood loss. "You're covered in cuts and this is your resurrection," he said as the Tres Bestias came to their mistress's side. "I heard your aspect was supposed to be sacrifice. I understand the meaning, but do not make any sacrifice if it can be avoided.
You are not my pawns, you are my comrades." He looked to the Amazon of the fraction. "Get her to Roka. It's late for me."
And with that, he left to go to his bedchambers.
Karakura Town, with Chad.
Night fell upon the city as the peace following Aizen's defeat continued to reign. The knowledge of the coming war with the Quincy did put an edge on everyone, but for now they all took what they could get. Chad had finished doing what Kisuk referred to as spirit rehabilitation to try to recover from his use of Diablo Gigante and was now walking home with Jackie. Ever since his fight with Yami, she's been spending more time with him and helping as she could. The two were sparring earlier and are now ending the day.
"How soon before you think you'll be back to 100%?
she asked as they made their way through town, enjoying the rare silence of the city since Ishin gave his squad some leave time.
"Think you'll be ready in time for the Quincy?"
Sato brought his fist up and looked at it, feeling the power inside his being. "I'm not sure I'll actually fully recover, but I will be back in fighting shape before they attack," he said, sounding confident though he might have been trying to convince himself that he'll be fine. The setback was such that he could only use his giant's right and devil's left, not his doble brazos, and he couldn't even consider his max. "I'm just glad that the fighting is over for now," he said just before sensing a familiar presence.
"Wait, do I know this Ryatsu?"
he thought before Jackie pushed him away as something slammed down between them.
"I found you.
It sang in an all too familiar tone, one Chad swore to remember as he beat the owner to near death before Ichigo sent it to hell.
Now, time for some payback. Jackie appeared by Chad's side and helped him up. "Old friend?"
she asked as they looked at the figure. He was rather large with long protrusions on his forearms that Chad knew held wings with small lengths of chains hanging off his arms. He wore a big black cloak that concealed his body and had white gloves and boots with a light bulb-shaped mask that was expressionless and split between white and gray.
"One that should be in hell," Chad said, immediately activating his full bring.
His shield didn't manifest, but he would make do. Jackie quickly joined Chad in going to her max level and getting herself covered in filth.
"How did you get out?"
he demanded of the returned Shrieker.
"That's my little secret,"
he said, jumping at the Fullbringers. The two dodged using Bringer Light. Chad was charging an El Directo while Jackie started attacking as hard and as fast as she could. The grunts of Shrieker echoed through the air as he withstood each attack until she kicked him upward and into the clear for Chad. He was about to fire the energy blast when he saw something come out of Shrieker's mouth.
Chad recognized the tongue and looked to see him and Jackie surrounded by the little monster Shrieker always had. "Jackie, run!"
Chad cried out as a high-pitched noise rang out, after the imps started spraying the explosive leeches. The two barely managed to escape the explosions and get to the air, where Shrieker was waiting for Chad. The Sinner immediately started punching Chad, throwing him back to the ground, before holding out his arms and firing a barrage of explosive bullets at him.
"Die! Die! Die!" Shrieker cried out, wanting to taste sweet revenge as much as possible but not risk too much exposure. "Feel my suffering,"
he yelled as Jackie blindsided him with an axe kick to his head, stunning the man as she delivered another kick and sent him flying down.
"That bitch!"
he growled as he examined his cloak, making sure he was still covered. "I'll take my time with her next." He turned and received a hard punch to his mask, sending him flying and almost breaking it. That did hurt, but I went through worse," Chad said, panting heavily due to all the explosions he withstood. He was burned and bleeding, but he refused to drop. Shrieker rose back up and felt his mask, grunting in annoyance. "Damn it! Guess that's it for now." A ring of blue fire appeared behind him as he slowly sank into it. "You won't be so lucky next time. I'll come back from hell as many times as I need." Until I finally dashed. Jackie interrupted him with a kick to his side, knocking him away from the portal, before she jumped away from it out of fear. Chad took the chance to dash to Shrieker and grab him by the mask, guessing that it had some importance to the sinner's presence out of hell. "You are going back to hell," Chad promised, strengthening his grip until the mask shattered. "The way you deserve." The visible eye looked at the Foolbringer in fear as Chad lifted and threw him into the air. The gates of hell soon appeared and opened, chain wrapping around Shrieker as a massive blade stabbed into him again, the cries of the damned falling on deaf ears all the while. Jackie used her clean boots to remove the filth before going to Chad's side, just as he collapsed. Meanwhile, on a rooftop overseeing the pair, Ishin took full measure of the situation. "We're never gonna catch a break, are we?" Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. Halibel's opinion. "So Lady Halibel, what do you think of our new king?" Apache asked her mistress as they helped her along. "I want his children," she said almost instantly, shocking her three subordinates. "That must have been a rough fight, she's not thinking clearly." Mila Rose followed, not believing what she just heard. "I've never felt this hot before," the water Arankar said, prompting both Mila and Apache to pick her up and rush to Roka, certain their leader was delirious from blood loss, with Sunsun by herself. "I didn't think a shark could get so thirsty." Mayuri's progress. "What are these readings?" Urahara asked as he went to his lieutenant to help analyze something new popping up in the living world, only to find Mayuri buried under crumpled balls of paper. Are you okay, Mayuri? Other than another dead end with the Arankar experiments, peachy," the psychotic scientist grumbled out. He then screamed in frustration and burst out of the pile. "So close and it was just another dead end. At this point, I'm tempted to clone their missing parts and surgically implant them. Odd way to make a hollow hole." Urahara returned, forgetting about his unknown scans. "Did you try it?" "No. Because it's ridiculous." "Wanna try anyway?" "Yes, actually," Koratsuchi said, calming down immediately. "I could use the distraction." That wraps up this part of What If Ichigo Awoke His True Powers to Save His Mother. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.